Chapter 1, Origins. Izuku Midoriya sat quietly in front of his family computer, his legs dangling well over the floor. He watched again and again as his hero, All Might carried dozens of people out of burning rubble and wreckage, laughing despite the chaos, destruction, and blood, even his own. Just this morning, watching this video would have brought out the biggest smile on Izuku's face, a smile so pure and full of joy that even the hardest of villains would rethink their life choices. But unfortunately, not all men are created equal. From behind him, Izuku could hear Inko Midoriya shuffling around, busying herself with something, anything. He knew she felt bad for her son. Pitied him even. But she was his mother, so he knew when he needed comfort, she would be the first to give it to him. "Mom?" He called out, his voice shaky with unshed tears. No matter how bad it is, he's always smiling when he saves you. Izuku turned slowly to his mother, the tears finally falling like rain despite the brave smile he tried emulating. "I wanna be a cool hero like that." His mother didn't even hesitate to run to him, wrapping her arms around her child tightly and sobbing sympathetically. "Izuku. Here it comes. Mom will make it all better. Like always. Who cares if I'm quirkless, right?" "I'm sorry, Izuku." Inko wailed, her grip tightening around his body. Time stopped for Izuku at that moment, almost as if the fourth dimension itself wanted to keep him trapped in that moment of hell forever. "Mom, I want to save people, please, tell me I can, please." Oblivious to the trauma scraping away at her son at the moment, Inko just held him even closer with eyes shut just as tightly, terribly unaware of the flash of red beneath her child's teary gaze. 10 years later. Izuku looked down at his feet as he continued his long walk home, his body hollow and numb to the outside world. The situation was almost comical, really. In one day, he got eviscerated by Kaken in front of the whole class, had his notebook destroyed, got violated by a sludge villain, and then learned that his idol, All Might, was fighting crime on borrowed time. Oh, and also, he told Izuku that he couldn't be a hero. He stopped on the sidewalk and gave a sad smile to no one in particular. "It's funny, I know he's right that being quirkless would make it really hard to be a hero, but having it come from him of all people hurts a lot more than I thought." Izuku clutched his chest as he felt tears begin forming. "I can't tell if I want to cry or scream more." Then he heard an ear-piercing cry. "Ha! Yeah, just like that." Then Izuku felt his bones shake from the sound of a powerful explosion around the corner. He could already see people fleeing the scene. He even caught sight of Kamui Woods swinging to where the explosion came from. Peering down the road, he saw a small crowd circling some sort of commotion. He could also see pro-heroes like Death Arms and Empty Lady joining Kamui Woods to try to either calm down the crowd or deal with whatever was causing all the havoc. Then he saw the sludge villain at the center of it all and his skin blanched. Him? How is that possible? All Might captured him and put him in his pocket. Then Izuku remembered the commotion from when he grabbed the number 1 hero and the jerky movements that could have all too easily dislodged a poorly secured bottle. He fell out at that moment. That means, this is my fault. Apparently the villain's got a middle schooler trapped right now. A random person commented from the crowd. What? Why aren't the heroes doing anything? Another pedestrian said, I thought All Might was dealing with this villain. Where'd he go? All Might's here. Where is he? Oh no. It's also my fault All Might can't help out right now. If I wasn't such an idiot back then the villain would never have gotten out and All Might would still have time left in his muscle form. Damn it, why am I so useless? Then Izuku saw the sludge villain's hostage. Kaken. Before he knew it, he had broken through Death Arm and the police's barricade and was running straight towards the villain. He heard people call out in surprise and shock, but nothing really registered in his chaotic mind. Get back here, you idiot. Death Arms called out to him, but the teenager was beyond reason right now. From the crowd, a skeletal man with blonde hair watched as the child he admonished earlier made a mad dash for the villain causing so much havoc. What the hell? The villain saw the incoming 14-year-old and recalled, it's that kid from earlier. Does he have some sort of a death wish? Bakugo could vaguely make out a shape through the pain, but he quickly recognized the poofy hair and lanky figure. Deku, he murmured weakly. Izuku's thoughts were racing at light speed at the moment, but his gaze was locked onto one thing, those fearful eyes. It was a look Izuku knew well from personal experience, ironically because of the person who currently wore it. But seeing his childhood friend turn bully with that look of absolute terror lit something inside of Izuku that he thought long dead. I wanna save people. Time slowed down for Izuku, as if the sludge villain was moving in water or something. In a split second, without even thinking about what was going on, Izuku determined the villain's weak spot and formulated a plan of attack. He tossed his backpack with all his might at the villain's eye, managing to nail it with perfect accuracy. Then, he began clawing at the slime surrounding his classmate with the speed of a man possessed. Deku? What are you doing? Bakugo growled. Izuku looked at his former friend and flashed a terrified smile. I just couldn't do nothing. Would you do me a favor and just die? The villain roared as he made Bakugo fire several explosions to push his assailant back. Then, the villain swung at Izuku with a particularly long tendril, intent on crushing the teenager into a different, more gruesome type of sludge. However, Izuku saw the villain's movement in slow motion again. It was almost like his brain was processing all the visual information available to him even faster than his already quick brain could normally handle. What's going on? So as the villain was preparing to use Bakugo's explosions, Izuku was in the jumping position. Then, as he was beginning to swing the tendril, Izuku was already crouched under its trajectory. Same for the next several attacks. It became increasingly clear to Izuku that despite the power and gross factor of the villain's quirk, he was rather predictable as a fighter. He's getting sloppy. He keeps me away with Kaken's quirk, but maybe I can use that to my advantage. If this attack pattern keeps up, I'll have an opening right now. Izuku jumped over a tendril and dashed straight for Bakugo. Izuku could hear the pro-heroes and police yelling at him again, but for once in his life, he felt good about the situation. All Might watched the scene unfold. This quirkless kid, damn it. Why am I so useless right now? Then All Might saw Izuku's eyes and his skin blanched. Wait a minute. Haven't you learned your lesson? You can't get near me. The villain lifted Bakugo's arm and prepared to fire. What are you doing, idiot? You have a death wish. Bakugo grit through the pain as he watched Izuku take action. Why doesn't he just run? The most significant way to change the direction of an arm is the shoulders, so if I grab his wrists, I can leverage them easily. Izuku ducked under the initial wave of explosions, which fired exactly where he thought they would, and grabbed Bakugo's wrists. Then, with all his strength, he pushed them up, right in time for the second wave of explosions, which fired not at Izuku but right into the eyes of the villain. In that moment of confusion, Izuku managed to pull Bakugo out of the slime and to the wall opposite the villain. His heart was racing, and he wasn't sure about the condition of his pants, but he had the biggest smile on his face. Don't worry, Kaken. Everything's gonna be okay now. Exhausted and barely conscious, Bakugo could barely mutter, "Run, you damn nerd." The villain roared, his eyes shut tight from the damage. Enough of this. He spun wildly, sending an absolute onslaught of tendrils in every direction at incredible speed. Izuku paled as he tried to move but felt imminent danger at every course of action. Despite his insight, it was clear that the villain's sheer physical ability coupled with Bakugo's lack of mobility essentially removed all options. These are way faster than before. I can see them coming and I know where to go, but my body can't move fast enough. Mom, I'm sorry. Izuku shielded Bakugo's body with his own and prepared for the worst. Huh. I really am pathetic, huh? I really need to practice what I preach. Izuku's eyes shot open and he turned around slowly, feeling intense relief wash over him. The towering figure of All Might stared back at him with a smile as wide as he'd ever seen, the back of his shirt dripping with presumably the slime he shielded the teens from. Apologies for taking so long, but have no fear. Why? Because I am here. With that, All Might delivered the mother of all uppercuts, splattering the sludge villain, extinguishing most of the fires, and creating a freaking rainstorm. Holy shit. He changed the weather with one punch. A bystander cried out in awe as the crowd erupted into triumphant cheers. Izuku's eyes welled up with relief, almost painfully so, a sudden wave of exhaustion hitting him as adrenaline left his body. Rubbing his eyes, he stuttered, All Might. Thank you. He saved us even though he's injured and already tired out. He's so cool. The symbol of peace flashed the teens a grin. Don't worry about it, kid. Happy to help. Ugh, I need to get out of here before the reporters hound me. I'm already past my limit as it is. All Might thought to himself as he turned from the slime splatter to the teens he just saved. You two alright? All Might watched as paramedics and pro-heroes looked over the kids, but he paid extra attention to the green-haired one. I know what I saw. Looks like I really need to have a talk with him. After getting thoroughly chewed out by Death Arms and Kamui Woods for getting involved, all while Slugger and the police were practically fawning over Bakugo, Izuku decided to go home, his path illuminated by the evening sunset. Lost in his own thoughts and the sound of his trudges, he didn't notice the sound of someone running until they called, Deku. Izuku turned around quickly, taken aback by the sudden arrival. Keikaken? Bakugo clenched his fist as he roared, don't think I needed your help or anything today. I had that slime prick right where I wanted him. Far as I'm concerned, you're still a useless DKU. So, don't go thinking this changes anything. Bakugo then turned and stormed off, leaving one very bewildered Midoriya behind. What was that about? Izuku gave a sad smile. I guess Kaken's always gonna be Kaken. Izuku turned around, rubbing his eyes, only to fall back with a shriek as a massive figure came barreling out from the nearby alley. I am here, young Midoriya. All Might? I thought you got hounded by the press. What are you doing here? Izuku managed to squeak, his heart still racing from the shock. The hero let out a booming laugh. Ha! Escaping those journalists was nothing at all. Why? Because JH. All Might spat out an impossible amount of blood as he shrunk to his true form, wrapped in a cloak of steam. Oh my god. Izuku shrieked again, his already irritated eyes and naturally overactive tear ducts threatening to unleash a flood of biblical proportions. All Might wiped his mouth and cleared his throat. Sorry about that. Anyways, I wanted to talk to you about your actions back there. Izuku looked down at his feet as tears began forming. I know. I am sorry I caused so much trouble. I don't know what happened. It was like dash. Your body moved without thinking, right? Izuku's head shot up to his idol and nodded. Why yeah. All Might nodded in acknowledgement and spoke. You know, all the greatest heroes showed signs as children that they were destined to be pillars in society. And all of them share the same thing in common. They all acted without thinking about themselves. That's self-sacrifice. You get what I'm saying? Izuku nodded again, his heart beating faster with every word. Is he saying, what is he saying? All Might took a deep breath and continued, Kid, I told you that you couldn't be a hero. Yet, not an hour later, you're the only one to charge right into a villain to save someone else. And not only that, you put up a hell of a fight. And even beyond that, you inspired me to go beyond. Tears were threatening to fall, but for once, they weren't from sadness or despair. Izuku remembered the words of his mother, his teachers, his classmates. Everyone who told him that he couldn't be what he wanted to be. What he needed to be. Kid, you can be a hero. There was no stopping these waterworks. His heart was positively bursting. His idol and the world's greatest hero had just told him, Izuku Deku Midoriya, that he could become a hero. Finally. Someone believes in me. I feel like nothing else matters right now. I just want to remember this moment forever and ever. He looked up at his hero and smiled as widely as he could. All Might looked at the kid with a smile before noticing the other thing he wanted to talk about. Oh, speaking of which, kid, I thought you told me you were quirkless. Huh? All Might looked at the kneeling boy curiously. You told me you were quirkless, but you clearly have a quirk. What gives? Huh? Izuku just stared at All Might, his eyes wide. Don't tell me you didn't know about it. Like here, look. All Might quickly took his phone out and snapped a picture before showing the screen to Izuku. Huh? In the picture, Izuku's bright green eyes were gone, replaced by a glowing red. What's more, his pupils appeared to be surrounded by a black ring with two comma-like symbols spaced evenly apart. Meanwhile, his real eyes reappeared, the red glow vanishing. All Might was a loss for words. Congratulations. I'm at a loss for words here. It's pretty late to manifest your quirk. You're what, 11? 12? Izuku squeaked, I'm almost 15. The symbol of peace spat up a waterfall of blood, so scrawny. He barely registered All Might's words as he continued gaping in awe at the picture. I have a quirk. It makes sense. Professors on quirk theory often like to say that quirks are analogous to muscles, with emitter and transformation types often triggered by reflex. I noticed my perception and analysis was a lot faster than normal, but I thought that was just adrenaline. Although I also had a degree of insight too, which I suppose is just a higher application of analysis, but for me to have used it so well in the middle of my first villain fight, I should have realized that something was up, although how could I when I was so focused on not dying and saving Kaken. Speaking of Kaken, I wonder if he'll stop calling me Deku now that I have a quirk. But speaking of that, how come it just manifested? And I thought the doctor told me that I had the extra joint so is held the quirk factor, although I think that's just correlation, which isn't causation so maybe I'm just an outlier from the norm which could. Stop. All Might briefly transformed and lightly chopped Izuku's head, you're giving me an aneurysm. Gah. Izuku exclaimed before he bowed continuously, I'm so sorry. I didn't know I was saying that out loud. Please forgive me. All Might sighed as he rubbed his temple. I picked a weird fanboy. This just comes with the territory. Look kid, there's one more thing I wanted to talk to you about. The fact that you weren't even aware of your quirk when you rushed in to save your friend just makes me more sure about this. Izuku was even more confused now. What could be bigger than telling me that I have a quirk? I believe you are worthy to inherit my quirk. What? Izuku quickly began a new muttering storm as he fervently tried to decode All Might's verbiage. Sighing, the hero continued, my quirk is called One for All. Izuku's eyes widened and he felt the air grow thicker as if the wind itself knew the significance of what All Might was saying. One, for all. All Might nodded, yes. It's a quirk passed down from person to person. Master to student. It's the crystallization of all of our combined strength, stockpiled throughout the generations and focused into one person. Anyways, you know about my injury, yeah? Izuku nodded quietly, recalling the ghastly sight on that rooftop. Well, since I can't use this power to its fullest, I need to pass it on to the next generation. And who better to be my successor than the not-so-quirkless boy who rushed into the heat of battle before anyone else? W8. You're offering me your power. I'd be as strong as you. All Might chuckled at the boy's awestruck expression, yes, you would be as strong as I am. Stronger, actually. Eventually. Plus, having a quirk might create some interesting effects too. Izuku tried to open his mouth, but all that came out was a squeak. His mind was racing faster than he thought possible. Then he heard a small ringing sound and momentary itch in his eyes. Oh, hey. It's back. All Might commented. Huh. Izuku gasped, only to feel that itch again and hear another, lower-pitch ringing tone. And it's gone. Weird. Anyways, I don't expect an answer right away, but dash. I accept. Izuku's eyes shone not with the power of his quirk, but with determination. All Might looked stunned for a moment, but grinned soon after, good answer. All Might, where are we going? Izuku asked his companion as they walked down the Muzutafu streets. It was the next day and Izuku received a text during lunch to meet All Might after school. After fanboying over how his idol was personally messaging him, he agreed and promptly got on a train the second the bell rang. All Might chuckled, in his true form so as not to attract attention, well I know you must be excited to start training to receive my power, but I think you should learn about your own quirk first. Also, I haven't finished your training plan yet. All Might muttered that last part quietly. Oh. But where are we going for that? My doctor's office is the other way. All Might shook his head, if he couldn't recognize that you had a quirk then, I doubt he'd be much help. No, we're going to see the world's greatest physician and an expert on quirk physiology. Besides, it's always good to tour your prospective school. My perspective, no. Izuku began trembling with both nervousness and excitement. No. No way. No freaking way. This continued even after All Might took him past the UA gates and to the nurse's office. Ah, All Might. I got your message. So, this is your successor. Little young, isn't he? Yes, thank you for meeting with us. He waited for a moment before nudging his protege and hissing, introduce yourself. I'm Izuku Midoriya, Ms. Youthful Heroine, Recovery Girl, ma'am. Damn it. Sighing, All Might tried to salvage this first impression, young Midoriya here is actually taking the entrance exam next year. Oh, so he's not young. He's just wimpy. Got it, Recovery Girl smiled at the boy, nice to meet you Sonny. Would like some candy? She held out a small handful of gummy bears, which the hero-to-be took gratefully. Anyways, let's try to figure out your dilemma. She led him to a chair and rapidly took his vitals, measurements, and a blood sample. While that's getting scanned, why don't you try to show me your quirk? Izuku nodded and tried to turn it on, only to realize something crucial. How do I activate a quirk? All Might rapidly announced in his muscular form, clench your buttocks and yell dash. Shut up. Recovery Girl hissed, prompting the now dejected number 1 hero to nod and sulk in the corner. Anyways Sunny, just try to reproduce whatever feeling triggered it in the first place. Do you remember what it felt like to use your quirk? Izuku thought about it and smiled after a moment. Yeah, it felt itchy when I turned it on. And I could hear a ringing sound. And then it was like whoosh and everything was slower and I could tell what was gonna happen and it like bam. Recovery Girl gave a forced smile and made notes in her binder. He's certainly as weird as All Might, I'll give him that. Okay, now try to recall your emotional state when that happened. Got it. My emotional state. Izuku remembered how it felt to see Bakugo struggling and in need of a hero, or when All Might told Izuku that he could be a hero. And then Izuku's eyes shot open, now red and outlined with 2 tomo. Recovery Girl smiled, well done. Now let me make some notes and I'll pull up the quirk registry and see if I can find any similar cases such as yours. She spent some time on the computer before gesturing Izuku and All Might to the screen. Now, there are only about 10,000 cases of people with late quirk manifestation since we began recording this information. That's a pretty small number of people considering there are over a dozen billion people with quirks in this registry. However, there are over 100 cases where people with late quirk manifestation also had red eyes like yours. All Might rubbed his chin. That's pretty rare. Recovery Girl shook her head. That means 1 out every 100 late bloomer has or had a quirk that changed eye color to red. That's incredibly specific. If I had to guess, I'd say your quirk is caused by a recurring mutation. It's almost like convergent evolution. She pulled up another page and showed it to her guests. Now, this is Midoriya's maternal family tree from the National Registry. Their quirk history goes back 4 generations. But nobody has a quirk remotely similar to Midoriya. Recovery Girl closed out the web page and pulled forth another family tree. His father, on the other hand, reportedly had an uncle with glowing eyes from heat vision. So that's at least a hint to a hereditary history. Izuku's eyes widened. Really? Does that mean I can shoot fire from my eyes? Recovery Girl shrugged. I'm not entirely sure, to be honest. It's not likely, but it's also not impossible. At that moment, the machine where Recovery Girl placed the blood sample started beeping. Well, that'd be the analysis. Let's see. What? What is it? All Might asked. Izuku gripped his school uniform. Please be good news. Please be good news. Recovery Girl smiled. Well, you definitely have a quirk factor. That much is certain. Izuku felt a lightness in his chest. I mean, I knew I had to cause of the picture, but just hearing it said out loud. As for why your doctor couldn't diagnose, I'd say it's because the mutagenic factor affects your eyes and optical nerves exclusively, not any other part of your body. So trying to use a marker, like the toe joint, wouldn't do much good. Though I always that the prerequisite for being able to mutate a quirk in the first place is the loss of vestigial physiology like the toe joint. Upon further analysis, Recovery Girl then rubbed her chin. It appears that your quirk factor affects a series of marker genes. Izuku hesitated before asking, Miss Recovery Girl? What does that mean? She chuckled, sorry. Those are genes that every human has. Some other species actually have this one too. But this would explain why there are multiple quirks with similar characteristics popping up under mysterious circumstances. From all the information I have, which really isn't much, I'd say your quirk is the result of a rare, but recurring mutation. I'll see if I can find anyone on that list from earlier that's still alive for comparison's sake. All Might thought before asking, how do you think One for All would interact with his quirk? Izuku blanched before realizing. Of course, she'd know about One for All. She knew I was his successor, didn't she? She probably treated All Might for his injury, so she'd know about that, too. Recovery Girl shrugged. It's hard to guess. I'd say to just use it as often as you can, in a safe and legal setting, of course. Learn its capabilities. Test it out. Push yourself. That's the only way quirks grow. If you break them down, they'll build themselves back up. Speaking of growing, All Might grew into his muscular form. Let's begin our training tomorrow. 6 a.m. at Dagoba Beach. That work for you? Izuku grinned and nodded furiously. Yes, sir. Ha. Now that's what I like to hear. See you tomorrow, young Midoriya. With that, All Might dashed out of the nurse's office at breakneck speed. Izuku stood there dumbfounded for a moment before murmuring, I don't know how to go home. It was a cold April morning as Izuku pulled a refrigerator with every fiber of his being. As one is prone to do at 6 in the morning on an abandoned beach. It sure is comfy on this fridge. So peaceful and immobile. All Might taunted while perched on the kitchen appliance like an oversized bird. Izuku gave one last heave before collapsing on his back, panting heavily. Why do I need to pull this refrigerator? To put it simply, you're an insufficient vessel for one for all. What? Why you said I was worthy. Izuku began the waterworks as All Might tried desperately to calm him down. Right now. Only for now. Your spirit is great, but if you tried to use my quirk as you are, physically, your limbs would explode. That made Izuku start screaming as he imagined his arms bursting. That's why we're training. After you complete my aim to pass, American Dream Plan, you'll be a proper vessel fit for any quirk. All Might slyly snapped a picture on his phone as he said that. Izuku nodded in understanding, so I'll be as strong as you then? Or stronger since one for all stockpiles power? All Might's sweat dropped, in a way, yes. What does that mean? You'll have my power, but... Izuku was starting to get worried. All Might? Is there something I should know? All Might was now sweating profusely. You might have some kickback when you use one for all for the first time. Kickback? Izuku was now imagining his arms ricocheting off his body as he tried to punch something. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. All Might tried to comfort his student, don't worry about it. For now, let's just work on getting you into shape and fixing this place up. Izuku raised an eyebrow, fixing this place. What's wrong with it? I did some research. Apparently, this place used to be one of the most beautiful beaches in the country. But now it's little more than a junkyard. All Might gestured to the miles of trash littering the coast. Izuku nodded in understanding. Yeah, I heard the currents bring trash from the ocean onto the shore. Then people started dumping stuff here since it was sorta dirty anyways. All Might nodded. Now, even the locals won't come here. Heroes today are all about fame and glory and riches. But being a hero used to mean helping out the community. And what better way to help out the community than by volunteering service? Izuku cheered, thoroughly pumped up, and prepared to start hauling trash again, only to remember something and freeze. Why the hesitation, young Midoriya? Don't you want to be a real hero? Why yeah, of course, but I had a question. See, I told my mom about my quirk and she told me I should get it registered, but... All Might smiled. You don't know how to, do you? Izuku looked down sheepishly and nodded. All Might clapped him on the shoulder. Not to worry, young Midoriya. Everything All Might, with me here. Izuku chuckled politely at that, but inwardly, he was questioning ever idolizing this man for that pun. But truth be told, you might want to hold off on registering. Your quirk, as it is fairly different from what one for all can do. Going from quirkless gives you the chance to basically put anything on the form that you want, but once you're registered as having heightened perception for a quirk, it'll be difficult to include super strength, speed, and endurance in that. Izuku thought about it and nodded. Okay, I understand. All Might asked, but speaking of your quirk, have you found anything interesting about it? A bright look overcame Izuku's face. Oh yeah. I wrote down a bunch of info about it in my notebook. Wanna read it? All Might nodded and was subsequently handed a badly burnt notebook titled, Hero Analysis for the Future, Volume 13. 13? What a fanboy. He flipped to the last written entry and nearly fainted at the sheer number of notes. Okay Tashinori, just focus on the important stuff. Subject, Izuku Midoriya, I have a quirk. Quirk, to be determined known abilities. Increased perception, predictive ability, insight, and analytical skill. Allows for rapid reaction and strategy against physical threats. Also enables replication of physical moves by observing target. Microscopic/telescoping. Vision, range, unknown. X-ray vision. Activation method. Triggered by emotional stress. Activates by recollection of that stress, takes a while to activate because of this. Notes, can only maintain 4-5 minutes continuously before exhaustion. Recharge rate unknown. Physical mimicry is limited by subject's own ability and requires heavy focus. When active, iris glows slightly. Tomo spin around pupil when using special skill. Young Midoriya, this is very impressive. I think this will greatly assist Recovery Girl in determining more about your quirk's origin. He did this all in just one night. What do you mean by replication of physical moves, though? Izuku suddenly blushed and looked down. WL. Last night. Welcome back to Dancing with the Stars. Izuku watched the TV excitedly as the announcer got the audience pumped up for the next performance. Mistakes were made. All Might's sweat dropped. I feel like I should have doubts now. Regardless of that escapade, the ability to mimic movements has a lot of potential. Like learning a martial art just by observing it. Luckily, our training regimen includes some calisthenics and aerobics to hopefully increase your ability to perform the moves you copy, but I'm glad to see this enthusiasm. Just the kind of thing I want to see from my successor. Izuku smiled, thanks All Might. I really appreciate all you're doing for me. This kid's gonna make me cry. Nonsense. I'm happy to nurture the next generation of heroes, especially when it involves my successor. Wait a minute, I'm a genius. Actually, I just thought of something else I can do for you. Izuku waved his hands in front of his face, and no seriously, All Might. You've done enough for me. Sharingan. Huh. All Might explained, your quirk doesn't have a name yet so I'm giving it one. Copy will I, Sharingan. Sharingan, Izuku mulled it over and grinned, Sharingan. It sounds great. All Might smiled at his student. Then he looked at his watch and nearly vomited, so much wasted time. Come on, young Midoriya. We've got a lot to make up before school. With that began Izuku Midoriya's training from hell. 10 months later. All Might locked his truck as he adjusted his scarf. While walking towards the beach, he heard a scream. A villain. Here. At this hour. Taking off a sprint, All Might prepared to transform, only to stop dead in his tracks. The entire beach practically sparkled with a complete and utter lack of trash and litter. And atop a large mound of garbage on the edge of the sand stood Izuku Midoriya, screaming, no, roaring, his head off to the heavens above. All Might was at a loss for words. He cleaned up outside the area I told him to, and just in time, too. Oh my goodness. The fully transformed All Might dashed towards his protege in time to catch him as he fell. Izuku looked at his mentor and weakly stated, All Might, I did it. All Might set Izuku down and shook his head with a massive grin, no, young Midoriya. You did even more that. You thoroughly exceeded my expectations. And now I can say with the utmost certainty that you're a proper vessel. Just look at yourself when we started. All Might pulled out his phone and showed the picture he took 10 months ago featuring a crying, scrawny boy lying in the sand. Now, that same boy is, well he still isn't a man, but he definitely isn't scrawny. Though he still cries a lot. But he isn't lying down in the sand anymore. Baby steps. I know I worked for this, but I still feel like I cheated somehow. Izuku commented while tiredly juxtaposing his muscular figure to his previous one. All Might lightly chopped his head, nonsense. There's a monumental difference between being born with a silver spoon and working your butt off for it. Now, the time has come for you to inherit my power. All Might plucked a hair from his head. Izuku smiled and nodded, I'm ready. Finally, after all that work, it's finally paying off. All Might held out his hair and exclaimed the 3 worst words in the best possible way, now, eat this. Board Chapter 2, Goombas, Thwomps and Chain Chomps. Izuku Midoriya stood outside the gates to the testing center, barely moving. Everything I've been through, the last 10 months, everything has been leading to this moment. I can't let everyone down, although I guess everyone is really just Mom and All Might. Oh, and Recovery Girl, too. She's nice, I had a point to this. He tried to finish his train of thought, but a walking interruption named Katsuki Bakugu decided to interrupt, move ya damn nerd. We're gonna be late. Izuku instinctively flinched, Kaken. The explosive blonde just shook his head and strutted past with a huff, just don't get in my way, got it? Izuku nodded furiously, got it. Crystal clear. I have never comprehended anything more than your instruction, and he's gone. Izuku sighed. Even after all this time and everything with the villain last year, he still hates my guts. At least he stopped bothering me at school. Izuku watched Katsuki walk up the stairs to the testing hall, overhearing some murmurs from fellow examinees who recognized him from last year's news reports. Although, I guess things haven't been too easy for him either. Shaking his head clear of thoughts, Izuku stepped over the threshold of the gates. Here goes. My very first step in my new life as the future symbol of peace. Then he tripped. Just randomly. As one is prone to do. I regret everything. He braced himself to hit first base with the ground, only to realize he wasn't moving at all. In fact, he was somehow suspended in midair, feeling completely weightless. Wadash! Izuku screeched in surprise, earning more than a few condescending giggles from the other examinees. Sorry for using my quirk on you without asking first, but I figured it's bad luck to fall before an exam. A friendly, almost saccharine voice sounded from behind him. Turning around, Izuku was greeted with every teenage boy's best dream and simultaneous worst nightmare, a teenage girl. Specifically, a short one with a brown bob, permanent blush, and massive brown eyes. Oh no, she's attractive. Every neuron in his brain began firing at such speed, he had to double-check that his Sharingan wasn't active. He tried to utter something, anything, in response, but human speech had utterly failed him. Instead, he tried to communicate through a series of inaudible and panicked exhales. The girl stared at him for a minute before smiling, anyways, let me help you down. She reached for his shoulders and lowered his feet back to the ground. She seemed oblivious to the fact that just touching this boy had both stopped and jump-started his heart. Then she tapped her fingertips, release, and Izuku felt the force of gravity return. Anyways, good luck in there. I'll see you around. She walked away as quickly as she came in, and young Midoriya was both grateful and devastated. However, one truth, one certainty, kept him sane throughout this trying ordeal. I just talked to a girl. A smile so bright that it put the first quirk to shame flashed across Izuku's face. Should I even take the exam now? I feel like nothing could top that. Then his stomach gurgled, and he remembered what heinous torture he endured to get one for all. And he wasn't thinking about the training. I didn't eat that hair for nothing. Let's do this. Whatever hope Izuku had for this test going well went out the window when he realized that orientation seating was by middle school. Hey Kaken. Izuku muttered as he took his seat next to his volatile classmate. Bakugo growled in acknowledgement, which was honestly better than Izuku could have hoped for. Then the lights dimmed, and a booming voice resounded throughout the auditorium, hey there, my young listeners. Can I get a yeah? The silence that followed was deafening. No worries. I'm here to give you the rundown on this here exam. Are you ready? This silence was even more so. Present Mike continued despite the lackluster reception, seemingly drowning out the sounds of a young otaku fanboying in the stands. Oh my god, it is Present Mike, I can't believe he's at UA, T-sis dash. Bakugo had enough and he hissed, shut the hell up, Deku. Izuku's face reddened and he clamped a hand over his mouth, earning a few chuckles from some students around him. Oh great, I'm already the UA laughingstock and I'm not even a student yet. Excuse me, Present Mike sir. A loud, serious voice sounded from the back of the auditorium. The student standing up was tall, very well built, and had a serious face to match his voice. You mentioned 3 villains, but this sheet clearly states that there are 4 types. If this is an error, this is a serious oversight, especially for a school as prestigious as UA. Then he turned in Izuku's general direction, and you, stop talking so much. If you think UA is a place where you can goof off while everyone else is trying to learn, then you're better off leaving now. Izuku tried to sink into his seat, his face red. As the sounds of other students laughing filled his ears, he mentally remarked, okay. Now I'm the school laughingstock. Bakugo watched the events unfold before muttering, elitist dickhead. Present Mike grinned, probably at finally having some fan interaction. Thanks for bringing that up, examinee 7111-. Izuku cocked his head. How does he even know that? Did we even get numbered? The first 3 are the 1, 2, and 3 pointers, yeah? Well, that 4th one is a 0 pointer. Think of it like a thwomp in Super Mario Bros., compared to the other 3 Goombas. It's just an obstacle and it's probably better to avoid it. Good luck with that, Present Mike mentally chuckled. Just remember to report to the testing site on your packet immediately after the written exam and be sure to follow the rules listed. I don't want to see any of my young listeners getting in trouble for attacking a fellow listener. I'm looking at you, examinee 3543. Bakugo paled, how the fuck dash? Seriously, when did we get numbers? With that, I'll let you all go. Just remember to go beyond. Plus ultra. Finishing the written exam was no sweat for Izuku. After all, when you're a quirkless teenager with no social life, you tend to spend a lot of free time in the library. However, waiting in front of the large gates to the massive fake city in front of him and the other examinees was slightly more difficult. Izuku turned to one examinee who was already in the fetal position. Okay, maybe more than slightly. Alright, young listeners, we're just waiting for a few more of you to finish up. Remember, you only have 10 minutes to gather points. Present Mike announced to all the battle zones. Izuku gulped and muttered nervously, okay, I've never used one for all, but I remember that All Might said there'd be some kickback. Not entirely sure what that means, but I'm guessing it can't be good. And then I can only use my Sharingan for about 8 minutes continuously before it times out, so I'll need to take breaks every so often to let it rest and max out my time. I guess my best bet is just to use the Sharingan to find the robot's weaknesses and beat them however I can without risking one for all. Smiling and looking up from his successful brainstorm, Izuku was met with the perplexed stares of many of the other prospective students. Not again. Then he noticed that same girl he spoke to out front. It's the really nice girl. I should thank her properly for earlier. His strides came to halt, however, when he felt a firm hand clasp onto his shoulder. Turning, Izuku came face to face with the same stern, weirdly tall boy who called him out in front of everyone in the auditorium. Oh crap. The taller kid narrowed his eyes, she's clearly trying to focus before the exam right now. You weren't thinking about interrupting her, were you? Izuku shook his head frantically, waving his hands equally so, and no. I swear. I just wanted to thank her for helping me dash. You're not some dummy contender UA hired to trip us all up, right? How the other boy managed to say that so seriously surprised Izuku such that he couldn't even reply. Start. The gates suddenly swung open. Now everyone was so surprised that they couldn't reply. Present Mike chuckled into his microphone, what? There are no countdowns in real life. Get moving. Izuku turned to the gates, only to find every other examinee already running into the mock city. Oh no. I'm already behind. He ran around the cityscape, desperately searching for a villain robot. Gotta start searching for points. Sharingan. Izuku called as he felt the slight itch in his eyes accompanied by the ringing sound he'd so grown to love. Okay, I see a lot of people concentrated in the city center. That's probably a bad place to go then, lots of competition. Instead, I'll stick to the edges, Izuku thought only to run smack dab into a 3-pointer. Oh crap. Well, I guess I wanted to get points as soon as possible. I can see 3 weak points in its shell and I'm pretty sure its power source is right under the missile launchers. It's also really slow and moves predictably. I can do this. Only problem, Izuku wasn't moving. Why aren't I moving? The robot started charging the terrified youth. Oh crap, he averted his gaze and held his hands in front of his face, only to feel a gust of wind as a bright blue beam of electricity shot straight through the robot. He turned to the source of the beam, which was an eccentrically dressed blonde boy with a shit-eating smirk and large eyes that practically sparkled. Merci, mon ami. We make quite the team, non. But I'm afraid we'll never meet again. Adieu. The blonde boy bowed and ran off, presumably to steal more points. Izuku shook his head. Damn it, I completely froze up. I need to get it together. Remember where you came from, Midoriya, and get a grip. Eyes burning with resolve, and also the natural glow of his quirk, Izuku picked up a sharp metal panel from the fallen robot. This looks like it'll come in handy. The 3-pointers are supposed to have the toughest armor, so I should be able to use this as a shield, at least. Izuku kept running until he found another villain, this one a 2-pointer. It immediately launched its scorpion tail at the boy. However, the robot, while faster than the 3-pointer, could not outpace the Sharingan nor the training its wielder went through. He easily dodged the tail and deflected its follow-up with the metal panel. Izuku then rolled to the back of the robot and, with a bit of effort, knocked the tail right off using the panel. He then seized the pointed end with his right hand, his left securely holding his weapon of choice, and buried it into the robot's central console. It immediately sputtered and died. Alright, that's 2 points. 6 minutes and 2 seconds left. Crap. I need more points fast. On cue, a 1-pointer rolled around the corner. Huh. It must have been attracted by the sound of me fighting the, oh crap. Izuku had to roll out the way as the small robot absolutely barreled right past him. It's a lot faster than the 2-pointer. My Sharingan can't keep up with it. I need to reduce its mobility. Noticing the rubber tire it employed, Izuku began charging the robot, sharp end of his panel held outwards. The robot replied in kind, rolling towards its opponent with its metal arm outstretched. At the last second, however, Izuku slid on the ground and shoved the panel into the tire, bursting it. Simultaneously, he used his legs to push the now exposed rim up, causing the robot to flip onto its back. Definitely lighter than All Might. With a quick swing of the panel, the 1-pointer was decapitated and Izuku tallied another point. That's only 3, though. Since the robots are attracted by noise, maybe I should move inwards. That's better than doing the same thing and hoping it works, I suppose. Izuku gave his Sharingan a break and took off at a sprint, passing several other combatants and robots along the way. I don't want to steal points from the other examinees. Oh. Those 1-pointers are open, but they're too fast for me to counter. I can barely follow their movements as it is. I should try to find 2 and 3-pointers instead. After Present Mic announced the 4-minute mark, Izuku finally found another 3-pointer. I'm not gonna freeze this time. Sharingan. Noting a gap between its armor along its center, Izuku easily dodged its attacks and managed to jump onto it when it stopped to turn. He then shoved the sharp end of the panel down the gap, causing the whole robot to shudder and start sparking. Then, the missiles started firing one by one. Oh no. I must have glitched it out. Then he saw a group of robots approaching him, likely attracted by the sounds of the explosions. I can use this. With all his strength, Izuku twisted the missile launcher towards the group and watched as the ensuing barrage turned the 2 3-pointers and 3 1-pointers into scrap metal. He then turned and saw another 2-pointer and 1-pointer racing towards him. Shoving the panel the rest of the way through the 3-pointer he had mounted, Izuku leapt off and started moving perpendicularly to the 1-pointer. At the last second, he ducked under it, albeit getting glanced by its metal arm. Oh, that's gonna bruise. He took off towards the 2-pointer, but stopped just short of it. Right here should be good, assuming I timed this right. He then turned back towards the 1-pointer, which was rolling towards him at even greater speed. Almost, now. Izuku ducked and moved to the side right as the scorpion tail of the 2-pointer shot out, perfectly impaling the 1-pointer's head. The broken robot continued to roll right into the 2-pointer, destroying it as well. Unfortunately, Izuku had not timed his dodge well and caught the 1-pointer's arm in a more direct fashion. He groaned, clutching his abdomen, acutely aware of someone else shouting about having 28 points and another remarking how they had 45. I can't waste time laying around. I only have 18 points. Gotta catch up to everyone else. Quite the promising pool of candidates this year. Midnight commented to her fellow heroes and proctors, a large number of them watching several screens displaying the different cityscapes. The Space Hero, 13, added, indeed. This environment tends to bring out the absolute best in them. From those who gather intelligence before acting, people who use their mobility and reflexes to navigate the large area, those who can adapt to any scenario on the fly. A large boom from one of the TV speakers interrupted 13's train of thought. He chuckled at the sight of a blonde boy panting in a pile of scrap metal, his hands smoking, and then there are just natural-born warriors. Present Mike grinned and spoke normally, the trademark sign that he was genuinely excited. This year might have some good students so far, but there's really only one way to know for sure. He pressed a red button. Izuku sprinted past more and more examinees but saw no robots for him to fight. Oh no. There's no more left. I need to get back to the outskirts as fast as I can, I'm still so behind. Then the entire city shook as a building toppled. What the hell? Another student exclaimed as everyone's jaw dropped. TT, that's the thwomp. It's massive. What version of Mario does Present Mike play? The zero-pointer took a brief moment to look at the crowd of teenagers in front of it before slowly rolling forward, its tank-like treads pulverizing all the rubble in its path. Like any normal person, Izuku started booking it in the opposite direction. Based on its movements so far, it subtly changes direction towards the nearest moving target. So as long as I'm faster than the slowest person, I'll be safe. Oh ow. Izuku's blood ran cold. He was subconsciously aware of dozens of others passing him by as the gargantuan robot approached, but he had to be sure. As long as I'm faster, I'll be safe. I can't waste All Might's training. He turned around slowly, dreading to discover what he already knew. I can't fight that thing. All Might did so much for me. I can't let him down. Zooming in with his Sharingan, he could distinctly detect a life form struggling under some rubble. It's bad luck to fall before an exam. Izuku took off running, charging straight at the zero-pointer with such fervor that even Katsuki Bakugo would turn tail. The nice girl managed to pry the rubble off of her with her quirk, but she visibly struggled to stand up, likely damaging her leg. The zero-pointer stopped moving forward and slowly lowered its massive arm. It's going to flatten her. But if I get closer than her, it'll immediately switch its targeting. He noticed several piles of rubble that formed a ramp of sorts. Perfect. Izuku jumped from mound to mound and then finally leapt with all his strength, the perfect timing and momentum carrying him squarely onto the robot's forearm. Immediately, it stopped moving towards the nice girl. Okay, I need to use these studs to secure my footing. The other examinees watched with gaping mouths as the timid kid they laughed at free ran his way up the zero-pointer without even thinking about it. If I can get to its right shoulder, it should turn towards me and away from everyone else. Then I can stall until time runs out. Unfortunately, the Sharingan's time limit reared its ugly head and Izuku slipped on a stud, his footing off without his increased perception and insight. Crap. High-intensity usage reduces my time. He shut his eyes, fearing the inevitable fall that awaited him. As he rolled off the side of the robot, towards its torso in a massive drop, Izuku remembered what All Might told him, you can be a hero. I can be a hero. Clench your buttocks. Izuku forced himself to open his eyes and he used his legs to push off the robot at the last second before he fell, managing to at least get closer to the zero-pointer's head. Unfortunately, he was definitely too far to grab onto it, but that wasn't the point. And let your heart cry out. Izuku pulled back his fist as the energy coursing through ripped his sleeve, smash. With that, Izuku punched the side of the zero-pointer's head. And by punch, I mean pulverized. The massive robot crumpled under the sudden force, practically flying into the building to its left, explosions coursing throughout its body. The examinees went bug-eyed. Most of the teachers in the viewing area did too. Save for one skeletal man who grinned victoriously. However, Izuku was far from feeling victorious. My arm. I'm falling. He clutched his flapping appendage, tearing up from the vicious pain. Can't rely on the Sharingan to get me out of this. Even if I land on my feet or roll, I'll probably get paralyzed or die. Maybe I can slow my fall with a New Hampshire smash, just like All Might. He pulled his other arm back and braced himself for the pain. Okay, 3, 2, 1, ga. Not as painful, but wow, that stings. Before he could fire his attack, Izuku was slapped in midair by the same nice girl from before. His descent instantly slowed, coming to a halt a couple of feet above the ground. I'm alive. The girl lowered the robot head she used to fly to save the falling boy and tapped her fingers together with great effort, exhaustion and nausea catching up to her, our release. The levitating boy promptly hit the ground face first. Ow, the irony. Standing up slowly, gingerly cradling his shattered right arm, Izuku approached his savior. Hey, are you okay? She smiled up at him before clapping her hands over her mouth while her cheeks puffed. Izuku managed to turn just in time not to see anything, although he certainly heard everything. That's almost impressive. So you're not okay? Izuku asked, still facing away. She giggled sheepishly as she slowly landed on the ground and leaned on the robot head, not wanting to put weight on her damaged ankle. Sorry about that. My quirk makes me sick if I overdo it. But what about you? That arm looks bad. Izuku chuckled sheepishly. Sorry about that. I think I overdid it, too. Huh, I guess we match then. She exclaimed all bubbly-like. Izuku's face reddened. Oh god, she's acting cute too. I can't deal with this. I'm Uraraka, by the way. Ochako Uraraka. What's your name? She smiled at Izuku, only making him more flushed. He started sweating profusely. I Izuku am Midoriya. It's nice to meet you, Uraraka. Then he remembered how he survived his fall. Oh, and thanks for, saving my life. Uraraka chuckled, I should be thanking you. The way you took down that robot was all BAM and POW and BOSH. It was so cool. I can't believe someone with a quirk like yours even needs to take the entrance exam. You should be a shoo-in for a recommendation. Heh, why you think so, huh? She's complimenting me. Now what do I do? I need a distraction like now. Yes. Well done. Here, have some candy. Yes. Good job. Is that? Recovery girl strolled through the crowd of examinees that gathered to see the person who destroyed the kaiju. She approached Izuku and Uraraka. Looks like you're a suitable vessel for now. Still needs work. I just hope you don't make a habit out of this. Oh dear, your own quirk did this to you. Recovery girl said as she kissed Izuku with those frightening grandma lips. Best not to put any more attention on this kid and let all those other students know we've met before. Oh, thank you. Izuku said, bowing as his art set itself back with a green glow. Oh, it's no trouble. Now, let's see about fixing that ankle, Missy. While recovery leg kissed Uraraka's leg, Izuku sighed sadly, even with all that training, I still didn't get enough points. But he looked at Uraraka, who was already looking at him. She waved, which naturally sent Izuku into a blushing panic. However, he still smiled, albeit sadly. I guess it was for a good cause though. 1 week later. Izuku stared at the fisheye. The fisheye stared back. He examined the subtle way the ocular organ conveyed its sheen, the delicate membrane coating the iris, the subtle browning caused by browning it in the fish oven, the black-like blackness of its pupil, the deep and rich cream-colored. Izuku. The voice of Inko Midoriya broke the young boy's concentration. Waha. Mom. Inko stared worriedly at her son from across the dinner table. Why were you staring at your fish? Should I be concerned, honey? Izuku laughed nervously. Sorry, Mom. I think I'm just tired is all. Dinner continued in relative silence. So did washing the dishes. Even Izuku's post-dinner bicep curls were carried out in unbroken silence. Aizu Izuku. They were carried out, being the operative phrase. Izuku turned to his mother, who was kneeling and holding out a light blue envelope. It's here, Izuku. Your letter from UA. He looked at the envelope and nodded, taking it into his room and closing the door. His mother paced nervously outside. Izuku laid the envelope on his desk flat and just looked at it. This is it. My rejection. I know I did well on the written exam, but with the practical, everything that All Might worked so hard for, wasted. No wonder he hasn't contacted me since. He probably found out how bad I did. Well, time to get this over with. Izuku muttered as he ripped the envelope open. As he did so, a small metal disc fell out and immediately began projecting. I am here as a hologram. Izuku's jaw dropped. All Might? The hologram of the symbol of peace laughed merrily. Haha. You're probably confused as to why I'm in your UA letter right now, but that's because I'm going to be a teacher next year. Isn't that exciting, young Midoriya? Izuku's jaw dropped even further, and no way. But then he remembered his exam score and looked at the ground again. Too bad I won't be around to see that. A voice off-screen muttered something, and All Might sweat dropped. Wrap it up. But I have so much more to tell him. The voice, likely a producer, muttered something else and All Might sighed. Very well. Just make sure to cut this part out. Anyways, young Midoriya, as you're likely well aware, you passed the written portion, but you only got 18 villain points in the practical exam. Unfortunately, that's not enough to pass. Izuku nodded sadly, his eyes welling up. I knew that already. I knew I didn't get in. So why does this hurt so badly? Luckily, there's more to it than that. Izuku looked up. What? All Might laughed. If you would, please look at this recording. He pressed a button on a remote and a screen appeared behind him. He pressed another button and a video feed started. Izuku immediately recognized Present Mike and Uraraka. What's she doing in my video? Uraraka approached Present Mike. Excuse me? Mr. Present Mike? The pro hero turned to the young girl. What's up, listener? She fidgeted. You know that curly-haired boy? Kinda plain looking. I heard him say that he didn't get enough points. But he only got injured cause he was saving me. So I was wondering if I could give him some of my points. At least the ones he lost because of me. Please. Uraraka bowed her head slightly. Izuku's eyes widened. She gave me her points. Present Mike just chuckled in the video and placed a reassuring hand on Uraraka's head. While I love your fiery spirit, young listener, I'm afraid I can't transfer points. But you don't gotta worry about him, believe me. The video feed shut off and All Might looked straight at Izuku, or at least the camera, inspiring acts of selflessness in others. What kind of hero school would we be if we ignored an ability like that? That's why there's a secret component to the practical exam, rescue points. Izuku's heart fluttered. Wait, is he saying? A panel of 6 judges rated you all from 1 to 10 on how heroic your performance in the practical was. And you, young Midoriya, earned 60 rescue points. 60 points. All Might grinned. While we're at it, 45 to Ochako Uraraka. This places her at 4th overall and you, young Midoriya, well, I'll let the leaderboard speak for itself. The hologram changed to the complete list of exam scores. Where am I? Izuku's eyes trailed up and down the list until something clicked. 78 points total, that's above Uraraka, Bakugo got 2nd. Cool. But he had 77 points, which means... Holy shit. Izuku whispered. All Might's voice sounded, haha. Yes, young Midoriya, you got 1st in the exam. Congratulations on getting the top score, my boy. That means you pass with flying colors. Izuku's eyes started tearing up and he remembered everything he endured. The years of torment, discrimination, and worst of all, pity. All of that had led to this. All Might reappeared and extended his hand out. Come, young Midoriya. This is your hero academia. On the other end of the door, Inko was about to burst in, the suspense eating away at her. Before she could do so, however, she nearly had a heart attack when Izuku opened the door first and enveloped her in a massive hug. Mom. I got in. I got the top score. Inko gasped with joy, a small waterfall erupting from each eye. Oh Izu. Then she fainted. Later that night, Tashinori Yagi watched the moonlight reflect on the softly rippling ocean surface. The sound of a young couple laughing at a nearby gazebo on the pier filled the air. So peaceful. Tashinori thought to himself, letting the fresh air fill his damaged lungs. All Might. The disguised symbol of peace spat out blood like a geyser. Who's that? The couple in the background suddenly started yelling, All Might? Where? All Might hissed at Izuku, say, my bad. I was seeing things. Izuku nodded, oh, my bad. I was seeing things. The couple let out a disappointed groan and went back to their date. All Might just sighed. So much for peaceful. He held up his hand, congrats on making it into UA. Izuku smiled and high-fived him, thanks. Though I was surprised that you're gonna be teaching there, especially since your official office is in Minato Ward Dash. All Might lightly chopped his protégé's head, stop it. Izuku rubbed his head sheepishly, sorry. He then added, just so you know, I didn't tell any judges about you being my successor. I figured you'd think that'd be like cheating. Oh, thank you. All Might continued, I originally planned on coming to UA to find a successor. But since I found you first, I decided to take the job anyways, so I could monitor your progress. Izuku smiled, but looked down, you've done, and you're still doing, so much for me. But even after all that training, my arm was useless after using one for all just once. I'm a pretty poor excuse for a successor. Nonsense. All Might chastised, you only received my power that very day. Even I didn't adjust that quickly. You're only barely capable of containing one for all for now. All Might picked up a few empty cans off the sand. But as you grow and temper yourself, you'll be able to control it much better and make it into a real force for good. To prove this point, All Might transformed partway through his sentence and crushed the cans. Wow, it really is All Might. The couple behind them cried out. Shit. Come, young Midoriya. Let's run. Izuku smiled as he recalled the day's events, strolling home on the sidewalk, guided only by the dull light of the lamp. Glad All Might and I managed to get away. That could have been bad otherwise. I still can't believe I'm technically the top candidate in my year. Ha, I wonder how Kaken feels about that. Turns out, Izuku wouldn't have to wait too long to find out. Because standing right in front of him, only a block away from his house, was Bakugo himself. Izuku paled. Kaken. What are you doing here? Bakugo's face was eerily normal looking. Deku, let's talk. If you like this content, don't forget to like and subscribe. See you later, bye bye.